Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's Let's Talk About It Tuesday here at the Yarny Bookkeeper. I am waiting for both Liz and Janice to join me. Hopefully, Liz will be able to make it. She lives in Ohio, and her home was one of the ones that was hit a couple weeks ago with the hurricane slash tornado, sorry. I always get those parts of the country mixed up. And she had a roofer that was coming today. So she may have just too darn much noise going on in the background to join me today. If not, she will join us next week. But today I wanted to talk about craft fairs. And that's one of the reasons that I asked Liz to join us. She runs a very successful handmade biz called The Viking Wife or A Viking Wife and Company. And she is in a very much a niche or niche market, depending on what area of the country that you live in and how you pronounce it. And she, well, I'm going to let her talk about that. Hopefully, she can join us. If not, let me just kind of tell you craft fairs are a lot of work. I had right now the only place that I am really focusing on selling my own handmade products is at the gift shop down at the greenhouse. And last week, Crystal, who owns the greenhouse, gave me a call and she said, I just had a lady stop in here. She's heading a craft fair next Saturday and really loves all of your amigurumi, and she'd like to know if you'd like to come exhibit at the craft fair. So, first of all, let's just say that trying to put together everything for a craft fair in a week is not something that I personally want to tackle. And some of that's just because I have way too much stuff going on. So I obviously said, hey, no, sorry, I can't do it in a week. But, give her my name and number. Sorry, I'm trying to open a jar of or a bottle of vitamin water, and my hands aren't working very good today. I certainly can't do it this year, but, give her my name and number and we'll talk about it for next year. So for any of you who do craft fairs, I'm sure you all know that it is a horrible amount of work. You've got to have a really good inventory of items. And when you need a good inventory, you need a fair amount of time to create that inventory. People think, silly people think that, it takes us just minutes to whip up something that's handmade. I know a lot of the amigurumi that I do take me 20 to 30 hours just to do one. And that's because they're extremely detailed. I personally like all that detail. Some of you have seen some of the things that I've done and others haven't. I don't have anything here with me that I can show you because, well, I am at the day job and, I, like everybody else, only have so many hours in my day. But it's just crazy. You can't whip this stuff together. The problem with the amigurumi that I make, because they are so detailed, I want a good price for them. Um, and a lot of people just aren't willing to pay that price. Uh, Again, based on that premise of, oh, it only takes a few minutes to just whip one up. And when you tell people, no, I'm sorry, it's like, I spent 20, maybe 30 hours on this. People look at me like I'm crazy, and I even had one woman who said to me, well, you must be awfully slow. Sorry, awfully slow. And it's like, no, it's not slow. It's just that these are extremely detailed. And yeah, that's why I'm asking the price that I'm asking. It doesn't take me an hour or 2 hours to whip one of these together. Um, so it all depends on what you make and what you sell, and you have to have a good inventory of items. You can't just show up at a craft fair with a half dozen things and call it good. Um, and it's really tough. Um, so and then there's all the behind the scenes work. You've got to make sure that you have something to package their items in when they leave your booth. So you've either got to have bags, and well, you don't want to reuse your plastic grocery bags from Shaw's or Price Chopper or Stop and Shop or Albertsons or whatever your local grocery store is. That looks a little cheesy. You do want to have either clear plastic bags, or you want to have a nice bag with your company information on it. Um, so you've got to do all of this prep work, and to make your items, you have to have a very rigid production schedule. And I know Liz has an incredible production schedule. It's like she finishes one year's show and she is immediately starting to build inventory for the next year. And then, of course, there's also the fact that, what's a real big seller one year is not necessarily going to be a big seller the next. So you want to look for trends in you know, color trends, or just if you focus on scarves and hats, you want to look at clothing accessory trends, and you always want to take colors into consideration because there's always a hot color. You may not think it's such a hot color, but other people do. So you've got a lot of behind the scenes things to look at and think about. And then, of course, there's, you got to have the stuff for your booth. If the fair is outside, you need a tent, because what happens if that beautiful sunny day that the weatherman predicted turns into a total washout? You don't want everything to be ruined. So you've got display expenses. You've got to have you got to have a table. You want a tablecloth or a nice piece of material to cover your table with. So you've got all of those things. Um, how are you going to accept payment? If you only take cash, well, you're limiting yourself. If you take personal checks, you run the risk of somebody writing you a bad check, and they have the merchandise and you're out the money. So you need to have a way to accept credit cards, which means a PayPal or a Square account and a little Square reader that goes into the top of your phone. And speaking of phones, you know, what happens if you're in an area where cell phone service is bad or worse yet, non-existent? Um, you know, Square and Pay, well, Pay Square especially has a way where you can swipe the card um, and have them sign it, and then later when you get back home, it will, and you have internet or cell service again or whatever, it will then process all of those scanned card transactions. So you're still going to get your money. Um, so there's just a lot of things to think about. Um, you know, display items for your booth, whether it's some pretty baskets to hold dishcloths, washcloths, bath puffs. You want to make your display as attractive as possible. Um, you don't, you certainly don't want to, you know, make it look like everything is piled on top of itself. So you want to have an attractive display, an attractive table. You may want a little checkout area. I've seen some really cute things on Pinterest that were made with, of all things, pallets and leftover lumber. And they're all hinged together, so that means they're super portable and they're pretty lightweight. Um, you know, you want to make your storefront at a craft fair as attractive as possible. You actually, the end goal should be that you want it to look like a storefront in a real brick and mortar store. If you have a tent, you can. I hung some heavy duty fish line from along the tent supports, and from there I hung certain items from that heavy duty fish line. You could use nice rope and hang things from that. You could do, oh my God, any number of things. So, craft fairs are a lot of work. It's not just the work that goes into building your inventory, but it's the actual work for getting your vehicle loaded the night before. Having a list of all the things that you need to take with you, have that check-off list, and then, it, kind of hope that you haven't forgotten anything. And it's also helpful if you can have someone go with you. I did a craft fair, and my oldest granddaughter went with me. And it was really kind of cool because I had just taught her how to crochet. So she's sitting there crocheting while she's in my booth. And of course, that made people come in and look because, I mean, she was not quite 18. So here's this young lady sitting and crocheting in public. And, so people were curious. They came into the booth, and some of them asked if she had made all the items that were there, and she was like, "Oh no, I'm just starting. You know, I'm nowhere near ready to do this kind of stuff." Not that she's any slouch, and let me tell you, she has gotten bitten by the amigurumi bug, and I think last year she made a few things and sold them to people that she knew. So that was kind of cool. But if you have someone who can go with you, um, they can spell you, well, you need to go to the restroom, or if you find that you forgot something and they can drive, they can go pick up whatever it was you forgot, or they can just stay with the booth while you go get whatever you need. Make sure things are priced. When I do a craft fair, absolutely everything has a price tag on it, as well as care instructions. And if it has small parts, I put that disclaimer, not intended for children under 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, because even those safety eyes, I can never get them off. Okay. And I've even taken like little jeweler needle nose pliers and tried to pull the eyes out of an amigurumi, and I couldn't do it. Now it just may be that I don't have no strength in my hands, so I had my husband try, and he couldn't either. But the one thing I know about little kids is they can do things that we adults cannot do for whatever reason. Uh, just like all these child safe caps that are on medicine bottles, they can open them a heck of a lot easier than I can. So, just kind of take all of those things into consideration. The last thing people want to do is have to ask for a price. If they don't see prices, they're just automatically going to make an assumption that it's out of their price range or whatever. But people don't like to ask for whatever reason at a craft fair, or at least that's been my experience. Um, you know, have go old school and have a clipboard and paper sitting on your table. Ask people to sign up for a mailing list, to be notified of, maybe the next craft fair you're doing, or if you're going to run a special. You stay in contact with these folks. Out of sight is out of mind. Now, when I do a craft fair and do do price tags, I actually bought business cards and I turned them into hang tags. So on one side of the hang tag is my company name and my contact info. And on the other side, you can put a description of the item and a price. I also sometimes like selling stuff down at the greenhouse. I put a second little string tag on there, and it's just simply the item name and the price. And when it's sold, they pull that one off and they put it in an envelope along with the money. That way I can keep track of my inventory as to what's selling and what hasn't. And they can also keep track too. So, get creative with your price tags. And, a price tag that's on the back of a business card is like the best marketing tool ever. People will pick up a business card, and then what happens? Or you hand somebody a business card. 10 to 1 is going to end up in the trash somewhere. But if somebody buys an item and your business card is on that item as the price tag, it's going home with them. Okay. And it's there. I mean, yes, it may end up in the trash afterwards, but they might also say, oh, yeah, I need to keep this lady's information because, I saw blah, 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 which would be perfect for somebody's birthday, 2-3 months down the road, or a graduation gift, or just a little, hey, I was thinking of you type gift. So, these are just some tips that I have run across. Now, I don't do a lot of craft fairs. I don't have time. And actually, it was only last fall that the doctors, after 2 years, were finally able to figure out why my fingers were so swollen. Well, it wasn't just my fingers, it was the whole back of my hand. Like, you couldn't see any of the veins or the tendons or the muscles in the back of my hand. It was so swollen. My fingers were like probably almost twice the size they are now. Um, I couldn't hang on. I couldn't crochet. I just couldn't. I mean, I could try for like 10, 15 minutes, and my fingers would hurt, my hands would hurt, and my wrist would hurt. I could knit, but it was slow, and it was because the only reason I could knit was, it's less, I don't know, wrist intensive, I guess, is crocheting. So I had a 2-year spell where I hardly made anything. It was very depressing, and very discouraging. So finally, last year, I got a hold of a new doctor, and they discovered I have psoriatic arthritis, and I've been taking methotrexate once a week for about a year, and it's taken almost a year for my fingers to come down to normal size. But I've had almost 3 years where my hands were useless. And, as a result, I have very little strength in my fingers. Mobility is good these days. So that really helps. In the day job here at the software biz, I type. And let me tell you, I felt like I was just doing the old, two-fingered hunt and peck method of typing after having been able to type like 120 words a minute. So all of it was extremely discouraging. So as a result, I don't have a big inventory of things, but I will definitely be prepping for the craft fair for next year. And, right now I'm quite content to just have what few items that I have down at the greenhouse in the gift shop. And, I'm making some decent money down there. And I will be gearing up for Christmas because we make hand-tied, hand-decorated wreaths down there. And a lot of people come in and, the whole gift shop scene. And I had a really good year last year. Matter of fact, it wiped out most of the inventory that I had. So, craft fairs can be fun. Craft fairs can be frustrating. You might not sell a thing. You might sell out of everything. People are fickle, and people are fussy, and what you make may not appeal to them, or they may be on a very limited budget and just simply can't afford that item right there. And then there's also the people who go to craft fairs for ideas, and then they go home and they make something themselves. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try a craft fair. And if you can get into a niche or a niche, and it looks like neither Liz or Janice are going to be able to join me this week, so I will invite Liz back next week, hopefully when her life calms down a little bit. and I will then ask her to tell us about her secrets for prepping for a large craft fair and how she fell into her niche. So until next week, thanks for joining me, and I'm going to close down for today. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.